everybody. I'm Chris Zigar. I am the Director of Innovative Instruction in the district, and this is...
Jillian Lutz, the Supervisor of Applied Sciences for pre-K through 5th grade.
All right, and right now you're in Mission 3, which is Essential Questions. So to give you a basic breakdown, here's what we're going to do. We're going to define essential questions. We're going to talk a little bit about examples of how they're used, the type of questions that you should get when thinking about writing essential questions, as well as the difference between essential questions and focus questions. All right, so let's talk a little bit about definition.
All right, so essential questions are questions that build off the enduring understandings that you learned about in the mission prior to this. The essential questions should be overarching questions that will be explored through multiple lessons, multiple activities, multiple units, and they're expected to be sometimes even cross-curricular. Essential questions are not questions that you should be able to Google and find the answers to.
All right, so let me give you an example here from the high school, right? So this is a unit specifically in the US 2 curriculum. I think this deals with the Great Depression, right? So if we look at the essential question, there's nothing in there that is completely rooted specifically just on the Great Depression. These are overarching questions that kind of hold a number of units together based on how we want kids to think. So here we see, how has the American government evolved throughout the 20th and 21st century? So that is a question that you can ask a kid at the end of the year, and they can pull in information from different units to be able to answer that question. That doesn't mean that every single essential question has to run the entirety of the year. It works pretty well in social studies like that. But what it should do is it should be used as kind of glue that holds kind of lessons together, units together, to try to create some kind of arc for the whole year. So let's try younger grade.
Okay, and an example for an essential question in the younger grades, I decided to pull a math one. And the first one on here that we're going to talk about is, how does the position of a digit in a number affect its value? This one is an example of a good essential question because it's an overarching essential question, not only in multiple units, but it can also be a question that's answered within multiple grade levels. This question is a question that will be continued to be addressed as students increase their understanding of place value. So as they continue to learn about place value, the answer to this question should become more complex as they increase their understanding.
All right, so moving on to the next part here is, why use essential questions? Well, first off, it guides unit development. So think of the essential questions as kind of gluing units together and allowing students the ability to be able to understand where they are and where they're going. So because of that, they create lesson focus. So the focus questions from a unit are going to tie directly into helping answer those essential questions of the course or of a string of units. So they also come down to help answer those enduring understandings. So when we talked about enduring understandings in the last mission, the overall point of an enduring understanding is that it's timeless knowledge and it goes beyond. So it can actually kind of vertically align different types of grades. An essential question gets you towards that timeless knowledge. Finally, what it allows is it becomes an anchor for students and staff. What it does for students is it allows students to be able to have some clarity and understand how individual lessons fit into like the overall part of the class, or as I say, like, so what, why are we here kind of question you get from a student. And for staff, what it does, it helps them kind of focus so they don't get bogged down in like individual kind of lessons or units where they're kind of getting stuck behind because they're also having trouble making connections of how these individual lessons kind of connect to the overall arching meaning of the whole year. So we're talking a little bit about the type of questions you ask, and there's two different types of questions you're going to see within your teaching, which are really focus questions for a unit or a lesson, and then the essential questions that kind of go beyond just the unit. So Jillian, you have to talk a little bit about the DOK and that.
So we've already started some discussion about DOK, which is our depth of knowledge. So your essential questions really have to focus within DOK 3 and 4. So the essential questions really dive into the level 3 and the level 4 questions because we're trying to push our students to make the deeper connection with the material that's being presented. We want our students to extend that knowledge and apply the skills learned into other areas. So when you're thinking about creating an essential question, the idea is these questions should really be able to help the students not only understand the material, but be able to extend that understanding to other areas outside of that general focus.
Okay, good. Yeah, and to make a distinction with that, and I'll go into focus questions, but if you see DOK1 and DOK2 for depth of knowledge, kind of the depth, some of you are familiar with the depth of knowledge wheel, and this kind of gives you a little bit more of a hierarchy of what that is. So your depth of knowledge 1 and your depth of knowledge 2 are things that you can Google pretty quickly, which is recall information, basic application of basic concepts. So if you look at how that might be reflected in a focus question, going back to the example I gave before on the Great Depression, how did the Great Depression change Americans' relationship with the federal government, right? This is a unit question, right? You can kind of, this is application of knowledge, right? You got this piece of knowledge, you're putting it in, right? It fits within the unit. For those of you who teach high school, this is like a good like short answer question at the end. Then you have the one underneath there, which is how did the Great Depression happen and how did Americans respond to it? This breaks that down. These are things you could probably Google. How did the Great Depression happen? Somebody can look that up on their phone, but they're not necessarily applying it or pulling it apart or extending out. So this is how you can see how these things kind of build up towards that essential question. So as we kind of finish this up, you're going to go through a couple activities on this. But as far as we're concerned within this section, you're done. So good luck with everything else you have to do. And hopefully you get that badge done, in a real timely manner. Good luck.
Good luck.